What's up, TNP and friends? Of course, if you're out there listening, we're glad to have you along. This is week 3, season 10 of our Fantasy Football League. Welcome to our podcast where we talk about fantasy football, players, managers from our league, drama, and anything else that comes to our minds. I'm Guillermo Delgado, and today I'm joined by Austin Garza. Austin, how you doing?
Hi, I'm Austin.
And Jose Martinez, how you doing, man? Oh no, we lost your audio a little bit. You there, Jose?
Did you? Am I here? Can
Just
you hear
like
me
a little
now?
bit, but it sounds good
Okay,
now.
wait. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Hi.
I think I'm gonna keep that one.
Okay, yeah, you should definitely keep that. I was so excited to be like, hey, how's it going, man? I'm doing good. And then just audio loss. I'm like, perfect.
If you're
That's what
watching
we're
the
gonna
video
start with.
or
Let's redo it, and I'll have the problem this time.
yeah, if you're watching the video or listening to the podcast, this is our 17th take actually. So we're just gonna keep on going. Today's show we're gonna do Jose's player profile. So I'll ask you some hopefully not too difficult like questions, nothing awkward. I'll try to keep it as interviewee friendly as I can. Of course, I'm not like a professional, but I'll do my
This
best.
is a gotcha interview, Jose. Get ready to get taken for a ride, buddy.
As long as I don't overthink, I should be good.
The guarantee is Jose canceled after the interview. And that'll be our first section. And then what I want to do is do 2 more sections. The second one, we are going to go and look at the matchups for week 2 in our league. And we'll just go game by game, talk about who won, who lost, what kind of player impacts there were, and stuff like that. And then the last section, because it's kind of an interesting, Tuesday of week 3, we're gonna talk about injuries, not like super specifically, not super, but there were a lot, and I want to do it from the perspective of how they impacted our league. Does that kind of make sense? I mean, we'll talk about them just in general, and general fantasy football stuff is gonna come up, but I'll try to approach it from, because there's a lot of interesting impacts it's gonna have and stuff like that. Y'all ready?
Ready.
All right, I'm gonna lower my thing a little bit. Sometimes when I get excited, I talk too loud. All right, Jose. The first question, of course, is gonna be it's the super vague one. Tell us about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? Just kind of your brief background history, kind of thing.
Yeah. So for those who are listening or watching the video, who don't know me, my name is Jose Martinez. I was born and raised in Brownsville, Texas. I went to Texas A&M and graduated in 2015 with a degree in applied mathematics and statistics. And then now currently working full-time at AT&T, doing on some data analytics projects and favorite hobbies of mine. I like to play video games. I'm into pop culture like crazy. So any memes or references, chances are I'm going to pick it up real quick, or I'll say very obscure references. Chances are people might not get them, but if they're funny to me, that's what matters. So,
I have that sense of humor too. As long as it's funny to me. Yeah.
Same.
One of my also biggest passions is music. As Gia knows, I love to before I was very limited with my knowledge of music, and then after going through entire life's journey, I learned and discovered a bunch of new music along the way. So, so big hobby of mine. And then now joining TNP with the 10th season of fantasy football. Pretty interesting how it played out. Before I had very limited knowledge of football in general, whether it be college football or the NFL or professional. But my saving grace here is having the mathematical background, checking out the stats, seeing what stats are causing the big plays or the big points, and taking advantage on those opportunities. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. Really happy to be here with everyone. Really happy to be participating. I'm already figuring out all the drama, learning all the ins and outs the hard way.
Because everybody filled you in.
Yeah, pretty much. Really every answer is just you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out.
Yeah,
that's literally every single even within the very first week. Already seen some of the drama unfold, some of the memes go crazy, people going left and right. Man, it's interesting. but it's also like, that's part of like the TNP culture among us. So it's
Yeah.
a it's a it's eye opening, but also it's also like a very nonetheless it's a fun experience with everybody.
That's awesome. I like that kind of outlook and perspective of like a new guy coming into like the fantasy football thing, and specifically with us. You've actually already touched on a couple of questions we're gonna ask, and I
Yeah.
asked Awesome for some questions too, and you were touching on one of his, but I'm gonna save that for a second. And so let's kind of try to do chronological transition.
Right.
So we're talking about you in the league. How did you kind of, when was the first time someone from our group like proposed or like even mentioned like you being in the league? Like how did you like come to hear of our fantasy football? Like did you know that we were all playing fantasy football before like it, or kind of who was the one that told you? Did you hear about it or
Right. So I think the very first experience of me finding out there was a league entirely was, I want to say, maybe 4 years ago, back in like, I want to say 2016.
okay, yeah,
I
uh-huh.
think it was like we all had a get together at Surge's place one
Mm-hmm.
evening. Um, all I remember
Oh,
was
okay. I
that
think I remember this.
Juan, which is one of our managers, he reached out to me saying like, "Hey, you're gonna be a part of the draft, so get me a good number." And
Oh yeah, oh I
I
see,
had
okay,
no idea what that meant. I was just like,
I remember
yeah,
that.
and I was like, but as a friend, I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll help you out. Yeah, whatever that means. But then
mm-hmm.
I think y'all had like some sort of, it kind of felt like a white elephant exchange where you can like steal numbers or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Classic.
Yeah, and then I think shots were involved, but also ping pong ball. I don't
Yeah.
remember. But all I remember was like, okay, Juan mentioned just get him to number one as close as possible, and I was like, okay, whatever that means. Like, sure, I'll get to number one or at near number one. And somehow I think I might have stolen Matt's number, and that ended up becoming like my number that I stuck with, like a permanent stay. Like no one could take, and that ended up being number four.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
And
pretty good.
I remember texting Juan. I was like, "Oh, I got you number four. Is that fine? Is that I couldn't get you number one? I think that he's like perfect. I'll take it." In
Yeah.
classic Juan fashion,
Right, exactly.
So that was my first experience. And then last year, I
Mm-hmm.
was gonna be involved somehow, being team assistant manager for,
That's
well,
right.
assistant to the manager for Gabe. But then I had a lot of school involved. I was working like 8 to 5 and then going crazy. So I didn't have
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
any time for myself or even helping out the team. I had this awesome idea of like, oh, what if I use like my data analytics skills to help him out? And Gabe was like, perfect, let's do it, let's make it happen. And then so he added me as an assistant manager, and then somehow that fell through the cracks, and I just never got involved. But somehow he placed pretty high, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
well, he had the best. He finished with the best record, regular season, right, Austin?
Yeah, and he got fourth like after playoffs. But
Yeah,
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 best
gotcha,
regular season of all time.
yeah. But he won
gotcha.
a
Okay.
shitload of games. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Um, so after that, it wasn't until maybe like several weeks ago where I guess Dino reached out and he was like, "Hey, how would you like to be a part of the league?" And I was like, "Cool, yeah, I totally would be down for it." He's like, "All right, can you find another person?" He's like, "Oh, why?" I'm like,
Oh.
do I need one more person?" Or it's like, "Well, it's a 10-man league and we don't want to make it odd, so we want to make it an even number league. And 12 is
Right.
the max. Do you know somebody?" So we were bouncing out ideas left and right who could be a good fit. And then he brought up the idea like, "Oh, why don't we bring like Mark Franco on board?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I think that'd be a good fit." I know he's like very competitive and he has a ton of like football knowledge because he was my freshman roommate in college,
Oh,
and
cool.
all
Oh
he
I didn't
all
know
he
that.
talked to yeah,
yeah.
all he
Nice.
talked about was like Call of Duty and football. But whenever it was football time, he just remember. I remember he said like he put
Mm-hmm.
on his TV in our dorm room and he was like, "Every Sunday we're gonna be watching football like all day." And I was like, "Okay, sure, why not?" And that was my first foray into football. I had
Mm.
little to no knowledge other than you live in the valley, therefore you're a Cowboys fan, and that was it.
Right. Yeah.
So, so that was pretty much where it came from. And then, so we brought him on board. Mark was accepting. He's like, "Yeah, I'm down." And then that's when we started the whole draft process and everything. And that was my first official foray into TNP fantasy football.